So today we're going to do a quick dive through DoD's new submission portal. They did replace the SBIR.defensebusiness.org with DoD SBIR STTR.mil. That's going to be the one you're going to use from now on. It's called the DSIP, Defense SBIR/STTR Innovation Portal. And there's some things that you kind of need to be aware of in the system. A few quirks, some things that might impact your ability to be able to submit in a timely fashion. But we're going to go ahead and get started here. So the very first thing you want to do, or you can do, is just go ahead and navigate to DoD SBIR STTR.mil/login. And it's going to be your first one here. I know that the old one still shows up, but make sure you are going to the correct one. If you were registered in the system before, your login information has migrated over. Otherwise, you're going to have to go ahead and create a new one. So once you get to the login screen here, you're just going to go ahead and use your username and password. And then one of the new things they implemented is a two-factor authentication code. So you're going to have to get it sent to whatever your registered email address is. And then once you're in, this is the screen you're going to get. If you're just getting into the portal for the very first time, you're actually going to have to put in some information for your firm registration. It's going to prompt you for a couple pieces of information, like your DUNS +4, your address, and a phone number. You don't have to enter your tax ID or your cage code right now, but if you have those handy, it's a really great thing to go ahead and put those in there. One of the other things you are going to need is your ZIP +4. You do have to have the +4 on there to be able to actually access the system. And to finish off the firm registration, if you have never finished off the firm registration before, you can't move beyond this screen until everything with an asterisk, which is required information, is actually filled in. But going back to the proposal dashboard. So if you're logging in again after you've already started working on a proposal, you're going to find those under your My Proposals. You'll see the list here of the different proposals, but we are going to go ahead and start a new proposal just so you can see what that process looks like. So first we figure out which set of instructions we're actually answering towards, whether it is the general ones are like one of the special Air Force Open Innovation topics, whether it's STTR, know which one of these your topic falls under, or your topic area falls under, before you get started here. But we're going to go ahead and start a new one for the Air Force Innovation Open Topics under the SBIR program. So when you click Start Proposal, you're actually going to see which BAA it's towards the program, whether it's SBIR or STTR. You're going to select a phase, so we're going to do Phase 1. You're going to select the component. The only time you'll get different ones here under the component is if you are going for like one of the topics under the DoD 2020.1 or .A, where you have to select whether it's Army, whether it's Navy, whether it's DTRA, whoever has released that topic area. And then you're going to choose your topic here. Then you're going to put in a descriptive proposal title. Remember, it should be descriptive because at a glance somebody should know what you're talking about here. We're just going to put in Test 2 here, but don't use that. And then once you've clicked on Create Proposal, this is going to be your working dashboard here. A couple really quick things to go over. So one thing is, before you can actually submit your proposal, each one of these items has to be fully bubbled in and green and at 100%. A lot of times you will have these stuck at 99%, and I will show you what that looks like here in just a little bit. But when you do have this at 99%, it means that all the information is in there. You haven't hit the submit button. One of the things that you will find in the new portal here, because it is largely modeled, or at least it seems to be, off of the NASA Electronic Handbook, when you click the submit button, you're actually not submitting your proposal. What you are submitting a verification that the information on that screen is accurate and complete to your best knowledge. So going over like the proposal summary here, you're going to be doing like your cover sheet first. You put in your duration, which for these topics is 3 months. Put in your technical abstract. You'll notice now that these are actually limited to characters rather than words. It works out similarly because it's usually anywhere out of an average between 7 to 8 characters per word. Very dependent. But for your technical abstract here, you want to put in a really good description of what you're working on and why it's unique. We're just going to type gibberish in here so that I can move beyond this screen. And the anticipated benefits and potential commercial applications of the research or development really is that what's the product going to look like, and essentially who cares? Who's your customer? Why do they care? What's that pain point you're addressing, and what's that gain that they're going to get? If you do have any proprietary information, you're going to actually mark the page numbers here. But for your list of keywords or phrases, it needs to be those things that if you were out there searching for something on Google, what would be the phrase that you would put in to actually find that result? The very top or to find what you're looking for as the very top result, or maybe even the next result down. Then you're going to go through all of these different bubbles here, verifying that if you are with your small business, if you are doing a subcontract, that at least 2/3 of the work is being done by you and not the research institute that you're partnering with, or the large firm, or the other small business, or a consultant, just what have you. The primary employment of the principal investigator under an SBIR does have to be with the small business. On an STTR, it can actually be with the research institution, but for an SBIR, you need to make sure that that is correct. That all of the work will be performed in the United States, that it will be done at your facilities by your employees, unless you are using a subcontract or anything like that. Essentially, they want to make sure you're not farming out the work. Whether you are or not using federal facilities, that you will comply with export control regulations. And if you do have any questions on some of these items, any of these blue links will actually take you directly to that piece of information. That if there will be ITAR within the deliverables, and that you are not submitting an essentially equivalent proposal, whether or not you've been awarded before, and that if for some reason all or part of the work that falls under this project is selected for funding by another federal agency. Here for your submission assertions in accordance with DFARS, these are your uses, release, or disclosure restrictions, really talking towards that technical data. One of the things that you probably want to do is say no, at least for a phase 1. If you do say yes, there is another document that you will have to actually create, and you will have to attach to your volume 5 in the future. But if you do want to claim assertions off the bat, you will want to read through this DFARS clause very closely to see how you would actually go about claiming those assertions or release and restrictions. Whether or not you are submitting research that uses human or animal subjects, You will want, if you are using anything that requires any sort of human input or animal input, you will want to be cognizant of the different ways that different agencies can actually define that, and you'll want to click on these links. Now you'll notice on these that I'm actually not clicking the submit button. You can click save and continue. You can't wait till the very end to click submit, but you are going to have to click submit at some point. Then you'll want to go through and assign at least a PI and a corporate official. For your corporate official, this is the person that is authorized to enter the company into a contract. If you have a separate contract negotiator from your corporate official, you'll want to actually add them. Otherwise, typically it'll be the same person. So this is a great point. As you see, my Volume 1 cover sheet is now 99% complete because I clicked Save and Continue on all of those screens. This is what will happen if you don't click that Submit button. But we can go back here, and it doesn't matter whether it's on the proposal summary, proposal certifications, or the contact information, just as long as you click Submit. So individually, you'll actually want to go back and click Submit on all of these. And when you do, so sometimes it might take a little bit for it to update, but now you see that it is at 100%. So for your technical volume here, all you're going to be doing is actually uploading a PDF file to put into here. When you upload the PDF, make sure that it's complete and make sure that everything is pretty much good to go, because if it's not, you're going to have to reattach the PDF. So as you see here, when you're uploading, you have a max file size, and it has to be within a PDF format. The system can be slow, so sometimes it may take a little bit. And now you see that I tried to upload a dummy PDF that was more than the page limitation, so it's actually scanning the PDF file and seeing how many pages there are. So now we're going to have to go back and actually get a different upload. So for the purposes here, we're just going to put in some dummy PDFs and dummy information. You see now that I've gotten a PDF that is less or 5 pages or less, it lists the file here. You can download the file to look at it, and you might get confused about the fact that it's listing any previous versions of the PDF. Just know that if you do have to make some changes and you upload a new version of the PDF, it kind of overwrites the old version when it comes to the submission. And so just as before, you see that clicking Save and Continue puts me at 99%, and then clicking Submit now puts me at 100%. For the cost volume here, you have the standard components that are required. If you do have a subcontract consultant, you want to put in materials, you want to put in travel. If you have any other categories that you need to add besides direct labor, overhead, and G&A, you're going to select those. And what type of payment you want here. And then you'll notice now that along with the direct labor, overhead, G&A, and profit, you now have these other ones to fill out. So when you go into the direct labor here, the very first person it's going to prompt you for is actually the PI. You're going to select what type of person they are for their labor category, and essentially it's what are they doing for your business. Who are they? How are you paying them? What are you paying them as? This kind of comes into importance later when they are looking at the salaries, because they will go by the BLS, Bureau of Labor Statistics, wage data for that region to look at whether the person that you're putting on this is either way high or way low, what the average is. But we're going to just pick one of them here. So for this one, I am now a chemist, and I have a PhD and 15 years of experience. This also does come into effect with the BLS wage data, because when you look at the BLS wage data for that particular region or area, you can look at those quartiles almost as kind of experience level. If somebody's in, the lower 25%, usually that's somebody that may have just graduated, may have, a couple years experience. They're kind of just getting started on their career. Whereas if you look at somebody that's in the top percentage, I think it goes up to 90%, that's, somebody that is, a renowned expert in their field. They have 15, 20 years experience doing it. Maybe they have some publications, maybe they've actually launched products, whatever it is. So that's what you're going to do whenever you're talking or you're putting in figures for their hourly rates. And of course, fringe rate here really speaks to those costs that your business has to employ that person. So that's things like, insurance, health insurance, time off, any of the things that essentially make the person happy and want to keep working there. And anytime you see any of these black little eye circles, you can click on it to get more information and see exactly what it's prompting you for there. But for this one, let's say 180 hours at $86 an hour. And it's going to automatically calculate this for you. And then whether the labor rates are fully loaded or not, this gets into the fact on whether you have to put in a fringe rate, or also whether you're going to look at things like overhead and G&A rates on these as a separate item. So for explaining the cost here, you can actually just say why you're paying this person, what you're paying them, what their experience level is. You only have 200 characters, so you're going to want to be very, very brief. And here for the additional information and cost support data, you actually want to put in essentially why you have decided to pay that person, what they're making. And if you have any documentation like their history or whatever, you can actually put it in here. If you do have multiple people that you need to put in, you're going to go back to direct labor and you're going to add another role. So when you do that now, you get an entire one, just like the principal investigator you filled out, to put in that person's, history, their wage, what they actually are, what they're doing, everything like that, as you see right here. And whether they're key personnel or not. And you see, because I do have at least some sort of entry in direct labor, now it's at 100%. For your overhead rate, you're going to either do a percentage or a cost. If you do a percentage here, that's going to actually add a calculation. Whether you have a material cost that is overhead rate that's different, other direct costs, and then how you're actually calculating that. But once you've saved that, now you see that it has recalculated my total, and it's actually applied the overhead rate to that previous labor entry. Similar for your G&A rate here. Let's say we have a 15% G&A rate. You're going to put in which categories it's actually going to apply to, then save it. And now you see that it increased the G&A cost by $2,300 essentially. And you're just going to move through each one of these. One of the most important ones to have here, particularly for the open innovation topics, is travel, because you kind of are expected to have at least one. Let's get rid of these other ones. You're expected to have at least one travel out to a customer during the period of performance. And you can also kind of play with these on the fly. As you see, I unchecked those boxes and checked travel, and now over here we are missing the materials and supplies, and it has travel instead. You'll also see now that G&A has turned to 83%, because now that I've changed what my ODC categories are, I have to actually re-put in whether my G&A rate applies to ODCs or not. And now it's back up to 100%. So at this point, you're going to put in a description of the travel, why you're doing it, where you're traveling from, where you're expected to travel to, number of people, number of days, estimated airfare, estimated car rental, and the per diem. For your per diem, you're going to want to actually put in there what the GSA travel rate is, and because there's not a separate entry for it, you should include the hotel under that total per diem. Technically, per diem is a wrapper for hotel, meals, expenses, and incidentals. So make sure you're using the right rate. And when you're using that rate, always make sure to know how the GNA rate is calculated, because it's based on geographical location. So it's not just the state. A lot of states will have different rates depending on where you're going, but then also dependent on time. So, for instance, in somewhere like San Diego, your hotel per diem is going to be higher in the months like May, June, July. San Diego is a sunny, summery place, so more people will travel there during those months. Whereas, in like winter, you may have a lower rate. So just kind of be aware of when you're going to travel, what that estimation is. And then for the meals, expenses, and incidentals, it will be the same thing. It may not break it out by month. Most of the times it will. It will definitely break it out by geographic location. But when you do travel, say you're doing a 3-day trip, you're leaving on a Tuesday, you're coming back on a Thursday, you have 1 day of full MEI rate, which would be Wednesday. Tuesday and Thursday are a 75% day because they are a travel day. So when you're doing those calculations, just make sure you're putting in that correct information. But rather than have to work through a bunch of boxes there, we're actually going to go back to cost volume, move the travel just so we can move through the system. So now you'll see that cost volume is at 75%. I have 3 of them at 100%, 1 of them at 0. Whether you're doing cost sharing, just remember for most of these, cost sharing is actually kind of unallowed. So that is the one that is required. You don't have to get a profit rate here. We always recommend that you do get profit because this is kind of your overflow. If you have expenses in other categories, or if there are things that might fall into the unallowables, this is really just your profit or fee for being a business and actually working on the project. But if we just put something in for cost sharing, click save, you'll now notice that that's at 100%. So you can view each one of these individually. Remember, if your max budget is $50,000, you want to get as close to the $50,000 as possible. You never want to leave money on the table. But again, you see that we're at 99% on the cost volume. You have to actually click submit, and it's flipped over to 100%. You will have supporting documents, at least for the Air Force Open Innovation topics, because you do have to include the 15-slide deck. Because the system has to be used for every component, they don't have a separate one for that. What you're going to do for the slide deck is you're actually going to put it in the other here. You can have up to 10 files, so this is also where those sections 6 through 8 for your technical narrative will go as those kind of supplementary documents, the ones that the instructions do say to submit under volume 5. One of the other ones that you're going to put in here is also for your training certification, because according to the instructions, they want you to actually print out the last slide, make some changes to it, put some acknowledgments on it, and then re-upload it. Even though the instructions do say to upload it to volume 6, as you see, there is no upload on here. So once you've viewed the training slides, and this is the last slide that you're going to put the information on, you're just going to click Submit. That's going to take it to the 100%. It generates a certificate, but again, as always, follow the individual service component instructions. A lot of times those will differ or be different than the blanket information. You always want to follow those component instructions. So we're going to actually go back here and just mark this one as no for the moment. And now you see that the firm forms, it still has a couple things that need to be filled out. That's why it's at 68% overall. So going into my firm certifications here, and I have to fill out this information. That's basically my basic business information. And most of these kind of fall along the lines of just SBIR or STTR program eligibility. And one thing that you will need here is of your company registry from SBIR.gov, and you need to actually put in your control ID from there. So if you go to SBIR.gov and log in, you're going to see the My Dashboard here. This is your SBC control ID here. This actually essentially just states that you have registered in SBIR.gov. All of the information is correct. And then what you're going to want to do is download this proof of registration and upload it here. So you'll notice there was an error because it just wants the numbers. So make sure when you're copying your control ID, you're not copying the front part of it, that you're just copying the string of digits. Then you're going to put in your signature, which you're just going to type in your name, your title, and again, you can save it, you can save and continue, but the kind of overarching one that you want to do is click Submit. It's going to prompt you for your audit information. Most first-time submitters, or pretty much any first-time submitter, is not going to have a DCAA review. The only time you're more than likely going to have had one is if you have actually gone to Phase 2, because that is kind of a requirement for DoD, is you do have to have a DCAA review once you're in a Phase 2. But just like everywhere else, make sure you click Submit. And because those were technically separate documents, you're going to actually have to go back to your My Proposals and the proposal you were working on. Now you see that everything is 100%. All of my bubbles are fully filled in. Everything is pretty much waiting. And now I have a red exclamation point because I am ready to certify. And that means that I'm ready to actually submit it. So clicking on the pin icon here will actually certify the proposal for a submission. And pretty much it's going to go in and make sure that everything's correct, and it's going to go ahead and submit it for you. Now, because this is a dummy proposal with a lot of blank information, I'm actually not going to click Certify because I don't want to run the risk of having this put in for me. It just would not be kosher. But those are the really big things you need to be aware of with this new submission portal, some of the weird kinks with it, some of the things that it does, and how you need to navigate a bunch of the different screens and where you're going to go and you're going to find that information to successfully get everything to 100% and certify the proposal for submission.